Now this is the brilliant Salomon S Pulsar 3, a nice lightweight, responsive, very grippy trail running shoe that I really enjoyed running in, both with training and racing. And you know, it was one of those trail shoes that was just enjoyable to put on your feet, and all you wanted to do was go and run fast, well, try and run fast with a big smile on your face. It really was an exciting shoe to run in. However, it has just gone through a big update to the S Pulsar 4. Now, to say that these are a completely different shoe from the ground up would be a massive understatement, and I'm really not sure about the changes that Salomon have made. So let's dive into the video, give you a few facts and figures about the shoes, and then we're going to be hitting the beautiful trails of Cornwall and taking them out for their first test run. Welcome back, folks. Thanks for tuning in again. I really hope you enjoyed today's video. I'm Lloyd Purvis and this is Run4Adventure. So we are back with another S trail running shoe after my slightly disappointing experience with the S Ultra Glides. That was definitely a hype shoe. There was a lot of buzz around that shoe and it did look great, but the performance for me didn't quite live up to the look. So if, like me, you're a big fan of the previous S Pulsar 3 and you're thinking about updating to the S Pulsar 4, then I would recommend staying tuned till the end of the video because, like I said, there is some big changes this time around by Salomon. But let's start off with a few stats first. If you haven't come across any S kit from Salomon before, what it is it's their kind of sort of performance department, and what that normally means is any kit that comes out of the Salomon door with the S stamp, it's usually crammed full of new and exciting innovations when it comes to technology and the fabrics and materials used. Also, normally their pro trail running team has had a big part to play when it comes to design and development. Unfortunately, it also means that there's normally a very high price point to the kit, and it's no different with the new Pulsar S 4. So these actually retail in the UK for a pretty hefty £200. Weight-wise, this is where we see some of the biggest changes. So if I grab the previous version and hold them up side by side, you'll probably tell why. So we've got a much narrower profile to that midsole on the Pulsar S 3. Now, this is one of the narrowest shoes I've ever run in, and you know, if you had any width to your foot shape, you wouldn't even get your feet inside that upper. But you can see from the previous shoe, we've got that wider profile and we've got more depth of cushion into the midsole. So basically, more shoe, more weight. So the previous version came in at a crazy light 216 grams in my UK 9.5, so very light, and that's one of the reasons why it felt so responsive and exciting to run in. But the new S Pulsar 4 now tips the scales at 265 grams, so still a nice light trail offering, but definitely a fair bit heavier than the previous version. And when it comes down to midsole figures, we've got a 34mm stack height at the heel, 28mm under the forefoot, giving the shoes a 6mm heel offset. And another big update, if I flip them over and we take a closer look at this Contour Grip rubber outsole, the previous shoe came with a pretty chunky and aggressive lug design on that outsole, whereas on the latest version, Salomon, for some reason with their pearls of wisdom, have decided to lower that lug depth to 3.5mm. So it really does look like the brand are sort of aiming the latest version of the shoe at a completely different market. Upper-wise, we've gone from the very secure but also extremely narrow matrix booty design on the Pulsar 3 to a more sort of traditional upper design with a gusseted tongue inside the shoe, or as Salomon like to call it, their endo fit. Really happy to see that the brand is still stuck with this lightweight, highly breathable and very durable matrix construction on the upper, because I am a big fan of matrix being used on our trail running shoes. Other upper features that we've got are Salomon's quick lace system, so you don't get any sort of traditional running shoe laces in the new S Pulsar 4. We've got this cord system in place. Literally all you have to do is pull that cord down tight. That's going to give you that nice lockdown around your midfoot, and then just slide the plastic locking mechanism into place. Once you've done all that, there is a small pocket at the top of the tongue where you're going to stow those laces away so you don't get them snagged on anything when you're out on the trails. And then finishing up, we've got a good level of sort of structural overlays placed around this soft upper just to give it a bit of substance, and then we've got a nice bumper in the toe for a decent level of upfront trail protection. Midsole wise, the pattern continues and we've got lots of big changes here. So there's pretty much a completely different midsole construction this time round. So Salomon have actually opted for their dual compound midsole, which is basically a combination of their Energy Foam and their Energy Foam Plus, which is a blend of PBA and EVA for comfort and higher levels of energy return. So like I mentioned, there's just more midsole, so more width, more depth to that stack height, but it doesn't stop there. So we've also got these sort of midsole wings working up to the medial side and lateral side and kind of giving your midfoot and heel a nice secure hug. So that's hopefully going to deliver a bit more stability when you're out on the trails. And that system actually looks very similar to what's worked into Salomon's Genesis trail running shoe. And then if I flip them over to reveal Salomon's all-terrain Contigrip rubber outsole with that new shallower 3.5mm lug depth. Now, the brand claim that this has been developed to give the runners a higher level of durability and confidence underfoot on all types of terrains, no matter whether they're wet or dry. Now, I'll add a little bit to that claim, as long as those trails aren't wet, muddy UK winter trails, because you'd have no chance in this shoe now with this shallower lug, and you'd just be slipping and sliding all over the place. So unfortunately, the new S-Lab Pulsar 4 isn't really an option if you're looking for a trail shoe for muddy conditions. And on that bombshell, there you have it, the latest version of Salomon's S-Lab Pulsar trail running shoe with all its new features. But I think we've reached a time in the video where we need to test these out. So I'm off to get changed, I'm going to grab the cameras, and you guys are going to be joining me for the first test run. So let's get out there and let's hit the trails. Okay, so I'm probably going to spend most of today's video trying to shelter from the wind, because it is absolutely blowing a hoolie today. I reckon it's gusting up to 40 miles an hour. Coming along the coastline there, I was getting sandblasted by the sand off the downs. It was super painful, so I had to cover my face. So windy conditions, and obviously that's terrible when we're trying to film, because the last thing you want to do is listen to a video with bad audio. So hopefully sharing from the wind is going to be the way forward. If you saw our last first impressions video where we were running into Hiddy Woods, the trails were super dry. Now, I said at that time we were expecting some terrible weather in Cornwall, and we got it. 2 days of really heavy rain. So the woods are going to be nice and muddy now for testing out trail shoes, but like I said in the studio, this shoe isn't really designed for that. So we've come out to the beautiful Hale Towers today. Okay, it's a little bit cloudy, and like I said, it's blowing a hoolie, but the trails are going to be nice and dry, and I would say that's an ideal environment for the new Salomon S-Lab Pulsar 4. The first thing we need to talk about is fit. So obviously it's an S-Lab shoe, and like I said, it is a bit wider than the previous version, but it's still S-Lab, so it is still a very narrow, precise fitting upper. I'd actually heard before I picked up the shoes that they did size small, so I've actually gone up half a size to a UK 10. I'm really glad I did, because I think in my usual 9.5 I'd have been right up against the toe box. So this 10 is giving me just the right length in the toe. But like I said, yes, it is a bit wider, but it's still suited to a narrow foot shape, and it kind of feels like an S-Lab shoe of old, and that's not the feeling I got when I ran in the S-Lab Ultra Glides. It just didn't give me that S-Lab feel that I do really enjoy in a trail shoe. So these definitely feel a bit more fitted, a bit more precise, and a bit more nimble and responsive. But like I mentioned earlier, there is a lot of scary looking grey clouds around, so hopefully we can get this run done in time before the heavens open. So let's get on with it, and let's make hay while the sun shines. Well, not really sun, but it's not raining. You know what I mean. So 4.5 miles down, and I'm actually really enjoying the feel of the shoe. They're running a lot better than I expected. Oh, this wind, what a nightmare. Ah! Okay, sheltering from the wind again. It is still gusting strong out here, making it super tough conditions to run and to film in. It really is challenging, and like I just said, the Pulsar 4 is running way better than I thought it was going to. Obviously with that increased weight, it's still only 265 grams in a UK 10, and a lot of the trail shoes that I've been running in lately have been well over 300 grams, so it feels lovely and light and nimble out here on the trails. Another thing I'm noticing is this matrix upper doesn't let any of the sand inside the shoe, which is brilliant. I've been running on lots of soft sand and I haven't got a grain of sand inside there, so that's pretty impressive. The downside is it's only a 3.5mm lug, so I'm not getting a lot of traction in the soft sand, but we've just gone past 6.3 miles. It's going to be a good 7.5 by the time we get home, so let's crack on, let's get back to the studio and we'll wrap this video up with a quick conclusion. Well, I actually got a bit carried away on today's test run and I ended up running just over 9 miles by the time I got back home. And I always see this as a big positive thing when it's your first run in a brand new shoe, because I must have been enjoying myself and all I wanted to do was keep running. So definitely a good thing, and good training miles in the legs and good miles in the brand new S-Lab Pulsar 4. However, it was tough out there today and that wind was gusting super strong at times, and there was a few times where I really had to sort of put my head down, grit my teeth to push through it. But I guess that means that I got some good training miles in today, and hopefully that's going to help me out when it comes to some of the upcoming events that myself and Liga are going to be running very soon. But let's get back to the shoes in question, and like I've already said, I was pleasantly surprised with how these felt and performed out on the towns today. It was really nice to be back in an S-Lab shoe that actually felt like an S-Lab shoe. So super connected underfoot, fast, responsive, nimble, you know, everything an S-Lab shoe should be that's come out of Salomon's performance department. And it really did remind me of S-Lab shoes of old, like I've already mentioned, and you know, shoes that I loved hitting the trails in, and in particular the fantastic red and black Sense Ultra. I mean, that was a brilliant shoe, very comfortable over distance, super versatile, and these did remind me of them today. The upper fit felt great on my foot shape, and it actually felt more like an extension of my foot than I had a pair of trail running shoes on. And this feeling, I think, came from this very precise fitting Endo Fit Matrix upper. So very snug, secure lockdown around my midfoot, very comfortable across the top of my foot, no issue with the laces pulling through, so that tongue was offering good protection, and just the right level of padding around the ankle collar and in the heel for me. So felt very plush in the back end of the upper, but it allowed me to get a nice secure hold in the heel. And you know, it really did almost feel like this pair of trail shoes had been tailored for my foot shape. Obviously all these things are positive for me because the upper works so well for my foot shape, but like I mentioned, if you did have a bit of width to your foot, you probably don't want to be running in these, because I think they would be pretty uncomfortable. But if, like me, you do have a sort of narrow, shallow foot shape, then this upper construction really does fit like a comfortable, precise pair of gloves. And also, it performed really well running on the sand. So 9 miles today, and I would say the majority of that run was done on soft sand. When I got home to tip my shoes out, there wasn't a grain of sand inside this upper. So this Matrix upper really did perform well in those conditions. It's actually a very similar story when it comes to this dual compound midsole setup, because again, it feels very S-Lab like. So comfortable, but not overly padded. Also really well connected to the trails underfoot. foot, nimble, fast, responsive and exciting to run in, while offering good levels of underfoot protection when you pick up any rocky sections of trail. However, word of caution now, if you bought a pair of these wanting a deeply cushioned super bouncy trail shoe, they might leave you feeling a little bit disappointed because, you know, the S-Lab Pulsar 4 isn't trying to be that shoe. These are all about running fast on uneven ground and feeling confident and connected while you're doing it, as long as you're not trying to do it on muddy trails. Today's run was mostly on compacted trail, lots of soft sand, with the odd short section of gravelly trail and a bit of tarmac thrown in for good measure. And I personally think that's the type of terrains where these are best suited. And after today's run, I'd be happy to take these up to sort of marathon distance, maybe 50k, depending on what the route is like. But if I was going longer, maybe I'd want a little bit more soft stuff under my feet. And I just put that down to, that's what I've got used to over the last 3 or 4 years, running in more cushioned trail shoes. And, you know, maybe my age is playing a part as well, but, you know, I'm in denial. And I dare say back in the day, I'd have been more than happy to run these over 50 miles, 100k, or maybe even in a 100-miler, but not anymore. You know, if I'm taking on those long distances, I definitely want a bit more cushioning in my trail shoes. As far as the Contagrip outsole goes, it performed okay on today's trails, but to be fair, there was nothing overly challenging out there, although it did struggle at times with traction on the really soft sand. And again, I just think that's down to the fact it's got such a shallow lug now, and I'm convinced it would have been a much better option sticking to a very similar lug depth and pattern that they had on the previous shoe, because, you know, a 4.5mm lug is going to make them a lot more versatile when it comes to the type of terrain and underfoot conditions these shoes can be used on. So rounding up after today's first 9-mile run, and there's lots of things about the S-Lab Pulsar 4 that I really enjoyed. This great fitting, very comfortable upper on my foot shape. Also the fact that the shoes feel lightweight, fast, nimble and responsive when you're out there on the trails, and exciting to run in. But I really do think that these are aimed at those sort of racing snakes at the front of the pack, you know, the men and women that are pushing super hard, trying to take podium spaces. And, you know, if I'm honest, I think my racing snake days are well and truly over. And, you know, I'm happy with that. But if that does describe where you are in your running journey and you've got a relatively narrow foot, then I think you'd really enjoy running in a pair of these. And there you have it, my first impressions on the latest trail shoe to come out of Salomon's S-Lab department. Really hope you enjoyed the video, guys. Really hope you enjoyed coming along on the first run with me. I've got to say a big thanks to Salomon for sending out a pair of shoes for us to test and review here at the channel. If you have enjoyed it, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, as it really is a big help when it comes to the crazy world of the YouTube algorithm. If you've got any questions about the Salomon shoe, please feel free to get them in the comments below and I'll try and get back to you as soon as possible. But for now, guys, thanks for watching. It really is appreciated. We'll be back soon, and as always, stay safe and keep on running. Also, I felt nicely connected to the trails while giving me good levels of underfoot protection. And why can I not remember the next line? Can I remember the next line? I need to call a friend. Let's ring in. Yeah, hi, yeah. Any chance? I'm just filming a video with Salomon's new S-Lab Pulsar 4 and I just can't remember my lines. Can you remind me? I keep getting to that. It's comfortable but not over padded, and then oh, okay, yeah. Connected to the trails whilst offering good levels of underfoot protection. Yeah, I got that bit. And then oh yeah, however, I've got it. Yeah, however, word of caution. Got it, thanks. Yep, cheers, bye.